Hi, welcome to Torah and the 12 Steps. We're going to do several clips on the idea of self-diagnosis. Why is it that the addict has to diagnose himself? Certainly, a doctor, a professional, someone who knows, or perhaps even another addict who's experienced already in recovery, should tell him, look, you're an addict, and he has to understand he's an addict. Instead, what we do is, as it says, we do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, as it says on page 31. And it mentions is be careful never to brand him an alcoholic, it says in the chapter of working with others. But we see that we do not push any label of alcoholic or addict on the individual. So it has to be conceded. It says as follows. On page 30, we learned that we had to fully concede. Now, fully concede means without any doubt. The admission of truth, although it was reluctant until some time. But finally, there's an admission, and it has to be fully conceded without any doubt to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Now, this book was written with wisdom, which means the choice of words used means something. It's not semantics. There's a concept, an idea, a message conveyed for why each word was chosen in this text. So when we talk about that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholic, innermost also is something to consider. Because when you have an innermost, it's as though there are actually three levels to the self. There's an outer, there's an inner, and an innermost, right? Innermost again implying there has to be a less inner than the innermost. And then you have, of course, the outer. Otherwise, you just say inner and outer. So what is the innermost self that has to be conceded to? To fully concede, and we see on page 44, it says as follows. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. Now notice probably. That is not the language the big book should be using. So there's two things. You're honest and you want to quit, you can't completely quit. And then there's a compulsion. You start drinking and you can't control the quantity that you drink. This means you're probably alcoholic. The question is, why not absolutely an alcoholic? So the reason is that this is obvious to everybody. Anyone can see this, but it's insufficient for the acknowledgement that we're talking about in the first step. That is not enough. We must come to the realization on a deeper level what the first three chapters of the A book which are mentioning, which is the insane thinking process prior to the first drink. That is what we need to concede to our innermost self, not the compulsion after drinking or the inability to stop entirely. That is not enough for the first step. So what is that which we need to do? We have to look and understand that if someone else diagnoses the addict, what happens is he intellectually agrees. Intellectual agreement is insufficient. On the other hand, also an addict wants to be a chameleon. He wants to portray to others what he thinks they want him to be. So he will say, yes, I'm an addict. You're right, doctor, I'm an addict. But he's not doing it from his innermost self. That's the outer self, the stage character that he wants everyone else to see. Then there's the inner self, which is how he interprets that reality, how he interprets himself in relationship to the outer. So it's still a fantasy. Even the inner is not fully to the root of the truth of the person. It's simply how he looks inward and sees himself in comparison and relationship with this outer facade. The innermost is where we're detaching entirely from others. We're getting to the core of the self, the truthful part of us, where we're not putting on a show for anybody. We're not portraying anything outward. It's the truth of that which is our innermost spiritual self. When we reach that degree, that we can see to that it's true. I have the insanity in the mind that the book talks about. Once we see that, now it becomes experiential. Experiential is in the level of reaching the innermost self. Reporting facts, seeing ourselves as we truly are. That is what we mean. That is what is needed. And then from within, the alcoholic wants to get better. When he self-diagnoses, the motivation now is from within, from his innermost self out, that he's ready to do the work. Otherwise, it's not reaching that level.